Good afternoon, lads and lasses, and welcome back to Koality Time. Episode 11 now, my goodness. That means that the very next episode will be the 1 year anniversary of this series, given that we sort of skipped episode 7. Something I just realised a few minutes ago actually is that I made a mistake with last month's episode. The title said Koality Time episode 10. The thumbnail said Koality Time 9. We're not even 12 episodes in yet and we're already struggling to keep count. So, as I said in the last two videos, I finally got that microphone I wanted all set up and ready to get back to video making. Although, if you saw the last episode of this series, I didn't actually get that microphone I'd ordered. If you'll remember, I said I'd had some issues getting things shipped in thanks to COVID-19 really putting a strain on online shopping. And in that video I said that I'd ordered a few things, an audio interface which had arrived just before, and a Blue Ember microphone, which hadn't arrived yet, even though Amazon had told me it should be arriving several days before I made that video. Well, it didn't arrive, and it was actually never going to. See, one thing that was a problem was that Blue wasn't shipping to Australia, so I had to order the microphone through a third party on Amazon, which is never as reliable. Turns out, the package actually ended up getting lost in transit, so it was never going to get here. Now, that was a shame, especially given how long I'd already been waiting, but it ended up being a blessing in disguise. Amazon was fantastically helpful as well, by the way. I sent a customer support ticket, or whatever they call it on that platform, and immediately got a response from a real person as well. And after just a few minutes of back and forth, I got a full refund and an additional gift card for the inconvenience, so props to you, Amazon. They also flagged my account as, I guess, a priority customer, so when I used that refund money and the gift voucher and splashed out a little more, and ordered a more expensive microphone, it arrived within a week. So we're now running a very expensive microphone setup. I've got a Blue Spark Blackout Edition condenser mic running into my Go XLR Mini audio interface, and I could not be happier with the results. It sounds pure butter, dude. I've also gone and gotten a bunch of acoustic foam panels to get rid of some of the echo in this room, which I never noticed with the old microphone I had, but now with this really good quality setup, all of a sudden I can actually hear it. The last two things I'm waiting on are a webcam. I'm getting a Logitech Brio, which as far as webcams go is basically as good a quality as you're ever going to get, probably the closest thing to a proper DSLR camera. And the other is a new monitor, a 1440p 144Hz display, which I can also then plug into the Elgato capture card I got recently. I thought there's not much point tearing the PC apart to install that and then doing it again in a week's time. Might as well just wait until I've got the monitor and then set them both up at the same time. I've also been looking at a pair of headphones, but that's definitely more of a personal luxury, and I prefer to spend the money I earn from running this channel on going back into the channel. So new capture card, new mic, new monitor, they're all business purchases, which you lads get something out of, while the headphones I'm looking at are something that's more just for me, so that's a wee bit different. We'll save up some more funds for them. I should probably end the spending spree after that, eh? The thing is though, with COVID-19 seeing so many different places getting shut down around here, there hasn't been a lot else to spend money on. I haven't been going out much, obviously, and it's good to avoid the cabin fever by changing things up and getting some work done, rebuilding the PC. I also got some new RAM which I'm going to install when I do the rest as well, and sound treating the room, getting some new live streaming stuff sorted out. I went and bought a whole bunch of overlays, badges and emotes and such from a website called owned.tv. And I am actually live as you see this video with War Thunder's 1.99 dev server, so make sure you're following me on Twitch at the link in the video description below, because we are truly now going to be getting back to live streaming, so long as Australian internet holds up. Now, I didn't want to spend just another episode talking about just PC parts and specs, and I've done a bang up job of that so far, but I wanted to address the half a dozen or so of you who asked in the last episode why I continue to go with Intel rather than AMD for the CPU. This series is meant to be about answering your lads' questions after all. AMD CPUs generally give you more power for everything except gaming, and they're not even far behind on that these days, but for a cheaper price. When you have a single PC setup for streaming like I do, it's worth going with Intel for the graphics card, seeing as the latest Nvidia GPUs all have dedicated encoders, so you don't have to encode on the CPU, which frees up cores there for other tasks. But as far as the CPU itself, unless you're into massively high performance gaming and nothing else, you're literally always better off going with AMD these days. So why haven't I? I mean, I did have the perfect opportunity to just a little while ago when I realised that I wouldn't be able to support the new CPU I had my eyes on without first buying a new motherboard, and could have just switched over to AMD for both there and then. The thing is, for some reason where I live, AMD parts are much rarer than Intel parts, particularly when it comes to the motherboards. You basically have to get them online, and I've never really liked doing that if I don't have to. AMD also doesn't have that price advantage here. For some reason they are just more expensive around here. I was also originally building my PC based on an Intel CPU, which was what was better for me at the time, and I haven't at any point rebuilt it from scratch since then. That was 3 years ago now, and at the time, AMD were starting to kick Intel's butt, not nearly as much as they have been doing this last year or so. But they were also showing some reliability issues. They were definitely the new kid on the block when it came to rivaling Intel for gaming desktop CPUs. I also had absolutely no interest in a Radeon graphics card for various reasons. And sticking with an Nvidia graphics card, I also stuck with Intel for the motherboard and CPU. Actually, when I first put the PC together, I thought that was what you had to do. I had no idea you could put a Ryzen 5 with a GTX 1050, for example. And actually, I didn't really know how AMD's naming system worked. I mean, with Intel it was always easy, Core i3, i5, i7, and at the time I don't think there was an i9. And then after that, higher number equals better CPU basically, so the i5 7400 for example was a core I had in my machine for almost 2 years, and then the i5 8400 was the one I upgraded to. Ryzen on the other hand always seemed a wee bit more confusing in how they name things, and Radeon graphics cards even more so. So I never really bothered learning how they worked until recently and realised that A, I could easily put, for example, a 2070 Super with a Ryzen 7 3800X and make a beast of a machine, and B, that the naming scheme really isn't that difficult to get a grasp on for Ryzen CPUs. Now, if I were to build a PC now, that combo is probably what I'd go with, but by the time I'm honestly considering getting rid of this rig, well, there's already a whole new generation of Ryzen CPUs just around the corner. The current Ryzen 9s will probably get a lot cheaper, and who knows what's coming for graphics cards, so in 2 years time, which is probably when I'll start outgrowing this PC, we'll have to see what looks good in the market to replace it. But chances are then I will be switching over to AMD, unless Intel can pull some magic out of their asses and convince me to stick around. So that answers those comments I got under last month's episode. And the other one I got that I wanted to address was on the Discord from Warhead, who says, "Hey Koala, legit question on something I noticed on the F4C and F4E. What's the pointed thing on the nose of the F4C, and why was it removed for the integrated gun when the F4E was produced?" Now, I haven't usually answered questions such as these. I typically like to keep these videos for more off-topic questions that I wouldn't otherwise address. War Thunder related questions, for example, like, what vehicles do you want to see, or do you think these vehicles would work? I tend to avoid, save them for their own videos, and many of them I've actually answered already. Like this question, for example, I have covered before, although I didn't draw attention to this particular piece. So if you look under the nose of some variant of the Phantom, you'll see this bulgy point sticking out, which houses additional antenna from the aircraft's main radar, something that couldn't be fitted fully internally, and so this extra little piece juts out. When it came time to introduce an integrated gun in the F4E, however, designers needed to make room for it, and so they actually borrowed the nose section from the photo reconnaissance variant of the F4C. The RF4C actually had a much smaller radar, seeing as it wouldn't be going into combat, it didn't need such an effective one. And this fitted snugly within the elongated nose cone of the aircraft, and then where this bulging point sits on the F4C, the RF4C put its camera equipment. The F4E took the nose cone of an RF4C, meaning it actually has a smaller and less powerful radar than that of its preceding fighter variants. But instead of putting camera equipment under the nose, it puts its M61 Vulcan cannon, where that camera sat in the RF4. Then, when it came time for the last variant of the Phantom, the F4G, the variant optimised for the US Air Force's Wild Weasel missions, which involve suppression of enemy air defence or SEAD, the gun was actually taken back out again, this time to make room for the radar homing and warning receiver. The bit that tells the pilots where the enemy air defence is that needs suppressing. So both the F4E and F4G are actually based on the photo reconnaissance variant, the RF4C, which was itself of course based on the actual F4C. And oddly enough, when you think of the F4 Phantom, a jet most people know as being distinctly naval, you are actually most probably picturing one of the Air Force variants, with the nose cone that was borrowed from a photo reconnaissance variant of that aircraft, rather than the naval interceptor, which retained the shorter, stubbier nose, as did the F4C and D and the FG1 and FGR2. Oh look, another video talking about bulges. I gotta stop doing that. But Warhead, I hope that answered your question, and as always lads, if you want me to answer any particular questions you have about any topics you'd like me to cover in these podcast videos, feel free to leave them down below or in the questions channel in the Discord, which, if you're not on, you should be. Now, I didn't actually want to spend this video talking about PC stuff or COVID-19, but I think that's basically a lost cause at this point, so here's an interesting little tidbit for you, seeing as, well, not a whole lot else is happening right now, is it? The coronavirus obviously forced a heck of a lot of travel restrictions, and a lot of people's holidays that they'd booked had been cancelled, or at least they looked like they were going to be, cruises in particular. Now, my mother had booked a cruise late last year, wasn't meant to take place until October, but with international travel restrictions for anywhere up to the next 3 years being put into place, that's obviously not going to happen. And most companies, like cruise ship companies, have been quite good around this issue, either offering full refunds or giving credit with the same company for more than the original value. Let's say 1.5 times the value of what you booked, you get back as basically like store credit. The Tank Museum, for example, when it came to Tiger Day, Tank Fest, etc., were given refunds, I believe, and various other similar events were doing the same. Well, these cruise companies had not only been offering full refunds or more than the cost of the cruising company credit, but they'd also been waiving their cancellation fees, which makes sense, after all it's not like people have any choice in the matter. But they're actually under no legal obligation to do so most of the time, and now, I'm not stupid enough to think that these companies are doing this out of the kindness of their own hearts, it's for reputation, clearly. But the problem is, some people have been struggling to actually get their money back. People who booked their holidays via travel agencies, for example. Because travel agencies weren't a struggling enough industry already. These days, the only reason to even use a travel agent is when they offer package deals. For example, you might get flights, accommodation, and passes to certain attractions, all in the one price. But those deals, if they're any good, are typically done as advertising things to bring in new customers and hopefully keep them loyal. They don't generally earn a large amount for the travel agency directly because they offer these packages at a discount in the hopes that you'll come to them for your next holiday. That's the point. And even this isn't something that's unique to travel agencies, but with how easy it is these days to do things independently online, it's basically all they've got. If you want to book just a regular holiday, a flight, etc., there really is no reason whatsoever to go to a travel agent anymore. Most of the time it's both less hassle and actually cheaper to just do it yourself online in the comfort of your own home. So it's no small wonder that travel agencies such as Flight Centre, which is one we have here, I believe it's an American travel agent, but their Australian branch is basically the monopoly of travel agencies here. But Flight Centre tried to pull a sneaky and attempted to pocket a little cash in between vis-a-vis coronavirus. What, did you think we wouldn't notice? What they were doing is, in many cases, receiving the refund money from the companies, like the cruise company my mother was booked into, and then just not giving it back to the customers, or at the very least charging upwards of $600 in cancellation fees, despite people paying for holiday insurance specifically in order to be able to cancel without fees if you wanted your money back. Now, like I said, Flight Centre is a struggling enough industry these days, but that's because travel agencies themselves are a useless and outdated industry that I say good riddance to them. This isn't the 90s after all. But you could at least understand why they would be less inclined to waive their fees even though they may not be obligated to do so, and say, well, it's in our terms and conditions. Yes, I know it's scummy, but you could at least understand it. If, and this is the real kicker, the company charging you for the insurance in order to be able to cancel without cancellation fees was Flight Centre. Once again, did you think we wouldn't notice? Well, of course somebody did notice, and that somebody was the ACCC, which is essentially Australia's version of the Federal Trade Commission, except that they are independent of the Australian government. And the ACCC took Flight Centre to court in a class action lawsuit, which basically ended in a day with Flight Centre saying, oh okay, I suppose we'll give you back all your money now. Yes, you sneaky pricks. I dare say you will. The thing is though, with such a large number of travel restrictions set to last quite a long time, and this class action lawsuit completely waffle-stomping the reputation of the largest travel agent in this country, I'm not sure about other countries, on top of the struggles the industry has already been facing for the last 10 years or so, since a travel agent is an outdated business that has no place in the 2020s, well, coronavirus may have just spelled the end of travel agencies as an industry. Along with cinemas, there's talk that most cinemas will never fully recover after having been completely closed down, and they too were a struggling industry already thanks to, the internet and specifically streaming services like Netflix, but the social distancing and quarantine measures that are being put into place have seen a lot of companies releasing their movies directly to consumers through those services, rather than holding them all off to then be released all in one massive wave as soon as restrictions lift, which would be just pandemonium for cinemas. Even Disney have been testing this out with their own streaming service Disney Plus, and are setting up to release their live-action remake of Mulan direct to Disney Plus, a trend which many people are fairly assuming may just continue even after things die down again. Online shopping, of course, saw an enormous boon, as did meal delivery services like Uber Eats, and people have even been wondering whether cash itself, physical changing hands money, may be just about on its way out, with the stress most shops that have either opened back up or remained open depending on where you live, are putting on the use of credit and debit cards over cash payments in order to keep to quarantine. I mean, you can already link your credit cards to most smartphones and pay with your phone. These physical media just aren't as convenient these days, and coronavirus is just doing more to nudge us away from them. Now that's all interesting, because it means while existing cinemas, for example, may not just shut down or be knocked down straight away, of course, nobody's going to be building any new ones. Why would you? It just wouldn't be worth it, given the influence of coronavirus kind of nudging humanity away from such, well, I hesitate to say it, but outdated media. DVD and Blu-ray is another thing that was having its seat very squashed by the success of online movie and TV streaming. Even services like Foxtel and other competitors are kind of being pushed aside in favour of services like Netflix, Stan, Amazon Prime, which comes with its own benefits given what we said about online shopping, as well as Twitch Prime, and of course Disney Plus. And it may seem like a strange thing to say that a virus outbreak causing people to stay indoors and watch more YouTube and do all their shopping online is going to change the world in such drastic ways, and it won't. But it has set those sorts of wheels in motion, and after all the quarantine, social isolation, napping the human race is doing right about now, it may be a changing world we wake up to in a few months to a few years' time, when we start to look at people who use cash or go to the shops or cinemas as being the outdated boomers, and anybody who uses a travel agency, when travel restrictions eventually get lifted, must obviously have more money than sense. None of which matters right now, of course. What's important is that you all stay home, stay safe, do your shopping online, sign up for streaming services if you haven't already. I mean, you can get about 6 months of free trials worth out of all the various ones available these days. Oh, and remember, there's a whole channel full of content you could be browsing, as well as Twitch, where, as you watch this, I'm probably live right now. Oh, and I guess there are a couple of other YouTube channels you might want to watch as well. Anyway, I hope you lads have enjoyed. Make sure to browse the channel and subscribe, join the Koality, and of course keep a whiskey to hand, keep your kilt on, and I'll catch you next time. Oh, before I go, I was looking for a potential rename for this series instead of Koality Time as a title for these monthly podcasts, so if any of you have any ideas, please do leave them below, or if you see one you like, be sure to upvote it, and I guess watch out next month, because if I upload a randomly titled video, it's probably the new series name I've gone with. If you prefer Koality Time, please leave that down below as well. Anyway, thanks lads, and I'll hope to see you on stream.